Okay, this is the video for chapter 36, Grammar Overview ad Graecium. And in this chapter, you've got several new grammatical concepts. As you can see, here we've got ne plus the perfect subjunctive, cum clauses, ablative separation versus ablative of place from which, location, interjections, more cum clauses. Okay, so we've got one more way here to show how you can give a negative command. So we've had several ways to give commands. This is just one more. It's ne plus a form of the perfect subjunctive, and as you can see in this situation, it is the second person form. So don't you go away, as you can see here. All right, so we've also got these cum clauses, as in when, although, since, because, and it's very simple. They add several more terms, but it's very simple in context. Okay, so we're going to flip over to page 476 and look at this first concept of ablative of separation. All right, so what this is, you've got these two verbs here, careo and libero, and basically they take ablative objects. So as you can see, pecunia, carere, to be without money, to lack money. So lack money, money is actually the object. And you see the second one, dolore liberare, to be free from pain or to free from pain. All right, so it's kind of separation, but it's really an object. Okay, next up we've got location and direction. So in some cases, as you can see, the cities, the home, the country, you have, instead of a preposition to show the location, you just have the word with an ending. All right, so for instance, you see domo, from home, domum, to home, domi, at home. Okay, so this is a special word. There are very few like this. You see the one at the bottom, the country, is similar in its pattern. You can see rure, rus, ruri. Okay, in the country, ruri. So pretty simple. And then we've also got more to do with the indicative and subjunctive with cum, and whether the verb is indicative or subjunctive changes the meaning of the clause, as we'll see in a minute. So we're going to flip over page 478, Grammatica A, ne plus the perfect subjunctive. Right here, you've got several examples. As you can see, as we mentioned before, they are the you forms, second person, ne habieres, don't go away, don't you go away. And you can see ne id viceris, don't you do it, don't do that. Any way you want to look at it. Then right below that we have the several different ways to give negative commands. You have the noli, nolite, ne plus the present subjunctive. Then you got your commanding verb, eubeo, order, I order. Impero, same thing, I order. Different format, the way it sets it up with your ne clause. And then fac ne, cura ne, kawe ne. So that's take care not to, be careful not to, and so on. All right. Now, whenever you have a cum clause with indicative, when or whenever, every time. Whenever you have the subjunctive, there are different possibilities: when, since, because, although. Now, there are clues that we're going to look at in just a minute to figure out why, how that changes. All right. There's also the timing of the action. It says cum plus indicative gives the actual time something happened or repeatedly happens. So that would be your whenever for repeatedly, or when for specific timing. And you can see the two examples. Cum fori sum, whenever I am abroad or out. That's repeated action. As you can see, when I will have traveled to Crete, cum ad Cretum iter ecero, when I will have traveled to Crete, that is indicative. It's just when. All right, over on the next page, okay, the circumstances. So if you ever hear the term cum circumstantial clause, that's what this is. When something happened. When you went. Okay, this is not exactly specifying a time. Cum nuper bias iter fecises. When you recently went to Baiae. Okay, and then since I too. Cum adolescens et ego sim. So you see there, sim subjunctive. That one is going to be since. So the other possibility, although I will never forget. All right, now this is going to be a little bit different, but we'll see that it makes sense in this situation. Translate that one. Although and tamen is included in there, and that is your clue that you would translate cum as although. All right, let's look down at our ablative constructions. Separation and place from which. Okay, verb of motion. So that's run, go, sail, whatever. Used with ablative prepositional phrase. So from which, so that means you're going to have a, ab, de. Those are away from, or down from, or something like that, or a or x, out of. So it's going away from someplace, motion away from. You can see how this works. From which place? A foro. The forum is a place. He ran out of the forum. A foro cucurit. Ab Italia. From Italy. He sailed from Italy. Navigavit ab Italia. He sailed from Italy. That is separate. That is place from which. Now, as we noticed before, we had these two verbs, careo and libero, free and lack. Okay, ablative separation, you will never lack. For friends, that is a name for something that is rather intuitive. You just can remember that those verbs basically take ablative objects and you're set. Okay. Next section, location and direction. So it says case without prepositions indicate direction, certain kind of words. Cities, towns, small islands, home and country. Okay, so like we said, home and country are two exceptional words. They each have three forms, and those forms are from, to, and at. Three different forms in either case. Cities, towns, small islands, these have different endings to indicate if you're going to, away from, or you are at that place. Okay, and this is where we get into the locative case, as is mentioned at the bottom. Locative case shows location. Very simple. We're going to go over next page in a second, but for the moment, accusative toward, ablative from. Okay, that echoes this ablative place which up above, except it's just the city, town, or small island in the ablative case. Same thing with the accusative case, and then you got these special locatives. We don't really talk about the locative a lot, but it's there. It was another case that was largely going away, but it still is. It appears in some cases. Okay, over on the next page 480, top of the page. It says locative plural, locative of plural place names looks like the ablative plural. So you get some examples. Bais, Atenis, Debis. Okay, so we know is is your ablative plural. Alright. But they switch it up first and second declension. Looks like the genitive singular. That's okay. Romai, Asti, Domi, E. So that would be the ending for the masculine and the feminine. I, feminine. E, masculine. Looks just like the first and second declension genitive. Okay. It says locative of the third declension looks like ablative or dative. At Carthage, Cartagine, E, E. Either one switches up in the third declension. Rui, in the country. Okay, so that ablative third declension sometimes would be E and sometimes I, but once again, once you see it in context, it's much simpler. So let's look at some contextual examples. My sister fled from Carthage. So you see, fled, fugit, implies going away from somewhere. So right there you know it's going to be from Carthage just by the context of the sentence. You live in a place, Atenis, habitat. So that's contextually easy. Then they switch it up. As you can see, fled from Athens in this example. You have Atenis, east. So that's that ablative again for the motion from. Okay, let's look over here at the more cum clauses. They give you several different instances of these, but once again we have the indicative. Whenever I make a journey, that's that repeated action. So cum ad Cretam iter facio. Whenever I make a journey to Crete, repeated action, indicative. Okay. The subjunctive, you have here the imperfect subjunctive and the pluperfect. So when I was making the journey, it's just some continuing action in the past. When I had made the journey, that's some action completed in the past. And so that's your pluperfect, whereas the first example, the imperfect, is action that was going on in the past. Not necessarily complete, but you know it is at this point. Let's look on down. They throw us in a few little interjections. Interjection is just when you throw in a word, you guy, heu, age. Say these in English. Oh my. All right, heu, you guy, terrific, fantastic, beautiful. You interject a little one word phrase, if you want to call it that, into your conversation. You interject it. Those are interjections. All right, next up we will go page 484, grammar B. Once again, cum clauses. Indicative, subjunctive. Subjunctive has several possibilities. And give you a little chart here. Cum plus the indicative, absolute time, almost dating the event. Pretty straightforward. Or frequent repeated action. Now let's look more closely at the subjunctive, because that is where we have to think a little bit harder. So let's look. Cum, when, plus the subjunctive. When is it when? Surrounding an event is not dated. Okay, that's pretty simple. Okay, causal, because. Although concessive, you concede a point when you say although. So they also tell you what tenses those can be. It's like I said, it's easier in context, and let's look at the examples because that shows us how this works. We won when Caesar was leading us. Okay, so we led him for quite some time. It is not specifically dated. Cum Caesar nos duceret. It's your imperfect subjunctive. So they chose the imperfect subjunctive for the cum circumstantial clause because it was action that went on for quite some time in the past and there's no specific completion. So that's why you choose your imperfect subjunctive. Okay, pluperfect subjunctive is completed action. Cum vicisimus fatigatissimus. When we had won, we were tired. So it's not dated at all, and it's the circumstances surrounding an event. Okay, the first event is we won. Second event is we were tired. Fatigatissimus. Next up, let the causal. Cause, because. Okay, it's cause. Shows the cause. Cum Caesar nos duceret vigimus. Because Caesar was leading us, we won. Really and truly, that could almost be translated just like the top one, circumstantial, and there'd be very little difference there. There's really very little difference. It would almost mean the same thing. Okay, concessive. Now, this is the one you concede a point. You give up a little ground to concede a point. Concession, concessive, concede, those words all go together. Cum Caesar nos duceret tamen victissimus. Although Caesar was leading us, we were beaten. So the tamen, something like nevertheless. You could even throw nevertheless in there. Although Caesar was leading us, nevertheless, we were beaten. So with that, you can see that these are not always exactly as you might think. You got to kind of think about what you want to say and translate accordingly. Okay, here's a little list of interjections. There are more, but these are just a few of the more common ones. Ecce, lo, behold. That's very, very common. Heu, how, vai, or why. Woe looks kind of like woe. Why victis, that's a common phrase. Woe to the conquered. All right, but these are not something that you have to change up or worry too much about. These are not going to change if you see them. Mean the same thing each time you see them. Let's go forward and look at the bottom of page 489. Okay, this is this very versatile word, cum, just a preposition. It's with. See it a good bit. It can also be put in the form of mecum, quocum, tecum, and so on and so forth. Pretty common, but it can also take on when, whenever, because, since, although, and even while. So it's very flexible, but they're two different words. Cum, the preposition, and talks about the conjunction here. Used to be quum, QU word, like all the other interrogative words, like quid, quis, quomodo, and so on as quom. And the two forms merged, and I'm sure it was no problem for the native Latin speakers, but for us, we have to think about it for just a minute. But this is the old Latin form, but it turned into cum. So, very, very flexible word, but this talks a little bit more about it. You'd like to read through that. And then, that is it for this chapter.